Well, let's jump into the top 10. We made it this far. Like I said, I can't remember which one goes where, so we're just gonna be surprised as we get to it. But these are the top 10 of our Star Wars consensus rankings. So let's do it.
Shut up.
I'm gonna hold y'all in suspense apparently because this one's not loading. So.
Well, apparently you really liked it.
I really liked it, whatever it was.
Oh, it's Rebels. There you go.
Star Wars Rebels. Wow.
About to say this was like it's got a countdown. 10, 9, 8. Yeah, we're gonna let Schultz go first because he's got it the lowest.
Yeah. Just another one where it was just like I didn't know where to put it. Like I really liked it. Don't get me wrong, but it was just like there's so many other ones that like I just liked a lot more. So I just kind of like placed it there. I do like that they introduced new characters though. I mean, all the characters are great. The story was once again good. The action was good. We had a little bit of Jedi. We had a little bit of bounty hunter. A little bit of like everything in there, I would say. Yeah, I mean, I don't really got much to say about it because, I mean, it was just good. So.
And this is, to clarify, this is all 4 seasons of Rebels collectively.
No.
We didn't split this one up because I feel like when people talk about Rebels, they don't usually just say, oh, well, I liked season 1 and season 4 I didn't like. They're usually like, yeah, Rebels was great. And so that's kind of why I did it the way that I did it. But yeah, I would say on my end, just briefly, I'm not going to say a whole lot, but I like how the show really gets better and better as it goes. Each season, to me, just improves on itself, and it even though the animation style is dumbed down from Clone Wars a little bit, and it's also dumbed down content wise. It's not as dark as Clone Wars. It was actually rated Y7, which is like really young kids. So, but what makes this show so good, despite all of those things, is the fact that it's a lot of the same creators from Clone Wars. Like Dave Filoni was still plugged in with this. Like y'all were saying, great characters. It has sort of that world hopping, different adventures that Clone Wars had, and also just the ability to take characters we know. Like I think the one that sticks out to me when I think of this is always like season 2 with Darth Vader and Ahsoka, like in the finale, and you get this really gripping like confrontation with them, and you're kind of left in suspense for how it ends. But she's like willing to sacrifice herself to save the rest of the crew and everything, and she has, she finally sees him for the first time since he became Darth Vader. And I don't know, it's the fact that it can be a younger kid's show and still have these really great Star Wars and character moments in it. Absolutely. And I think that's why the show is as good as it is because it's a show that like people like me that were in their 20s, when it came out or whatever, can enjoy it and be okay with the fact that it's not as mature as Clone Wars is, because it's just good. It's like just good Star Wars, and I think that's what sticks out to me the most.
To me, Chopper is an absolute psychopath.
I was just gonna say, like, literally the best character in that entire show is Chopper. 100%.
He's amazing.
Yeah, psychopath. You hear me? It's so this show is so underrated. It's got a lot of great stories to tell, introducing a lot of good characters, but it's got a lot of good backstories. To me, the reason I've got it so high, along with what Johnny said, is it expanded the Star Wars lore a lot. I mean, as much, if not more, than the Clone Wars did. I like the time area it's in, the time zone, because there's not a lot. Like, other than, the Rebel Alliance, like, you don't see a lot of individual planets, how it affects them. And so I like that part of the story a lot. I mean, it's really about Ezra growing up, and the whole overarching his story. So I like his story a lot. And obviously it's not over, but
that's true. It's not.
Supposedly.
Although some of us may wish it were,
I mean, I was about to say I was fine leaving it where it was at, but
Some things are better left alone. We'll put it at that.
Well, I love Thrawn too in this. I'm a big Thrawn guy. So getting to see him, even if it was an animation, it's still the Star Wars universe and in canon on TV. So
Yes.
I love that part of it too. Even though he kind of set him up to get beat, which he didn't really get beat. He just kind of got outforced.
He did.
Yeah.
So
I guess I'll just tack on with what you said about really liking Ezra's storyline. I really, really enjoyed his storyline because if you look at it, he's extremely similar to Anakin in that he has this anger that he can't seem to get rid of, and he's been orphaned, and he does just like Anakin. He's tempted by the dark side, but we see in Ezra he is able to reject it and become a Jedi more so than Anakin, even if he may not be as quote like talented as Anakin. He chooses the light, and I really like that we kind of got to see almost the light side of Anakin's dark side coin in Ezra. I think this show did fan service in a really great way because it brought in characters that we loved, but it didn't overuse them like we saw Princess Leia, but we only got like a little bit of her. We saw Senator Organa, but we only get a little bit of him. We saw all these other characters. We even got to see older Obi-Wan Kenobi and his final confrontation with
Great
Darth Maul.
episode.
Love that episode. I love how it mirrors Duel of the Fates. Oh, I love that episode. But I think in general, it's a really good story because it's a very unique story in a time that up until this point hadn't really been touched. But it didn't feel like it was trying to retcon anything too harshly. I had no problems with it. You know, the final season had me sobbing like a child during a lot of it. I literally have a patch of a Loth Wolf on my diaper bag right now.
It's true.
Loth cats are my favorite thing ever. I thought this was a great show. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I kind of want to add on to the whole Obi-Wan Darth Maul thing. Yeah, I think that was probably like one of the best episodes, I think, in the entire show. I mean, just like the callback to him using why am I blanking on his name?
the same lightsaber.
Qui-Gon Jinn. Well, same lightsaber and his same stance as well, to like almost like bait Darth Maul into doing the same exact attack that he used on Qui-Gon Jinn to kill him. I mean, it just that was probably one of the best episodes in the entire show.
Rebels is such a good show. It's hard to put into words how good it is. And one of my favorite things about it is kind of how I grew watching the show. Because I remember watching the very first day of season 1, episode 1, being excited that there was a new Star Wars cartoon. And I remember even the promos and the marketing for it was real lighthearted for kids. It was just a kid's show. And like you said, John, it was rated Y7. And I remember even thinking about not watching it. I was like, nah, I'm going to watch it because it's Star Wars and I'm going to eventually watch all of it. And I remember I liked it. And there was something about it that was different that just kind of caught my attention. And I remember there was a part of me that was like, I'm not going to watch this. But just something kept bringing me back. Ezra's character, you know, he's got a lot in common with a lot of kids that have had trauma in their life, you know, forgotten in some things like that. And then what is his master's name?
Kane.
Thank you. I went brain dead. You know, a fantastic character. You know, he was a Padawan with Order 66. He's been on the run ever since.
Which we see his Order 66 experience in Bad Batch.
Yes, like in the first 2 minutes, we see him on the hologram at the very beginning. And I remember me and her were just like, there he is. But I think what I was trying to say is as we keep watching it, you know, let's fast forward to when him and Darth Maul are crawling up this Sith temple underground and he's being tempted with the dark side. And if you just hit pause go back to season 1, episode 1, and start it. You're like, how did we get here? So the show, you can tell it started off as this little kid show that was going to be lighthearted with a droid that got into some mischief and they're fighting the bad guys, and that was it. And next thing you know, we're in a Sith temple with Darth Maul as an old man.
Looking for holocrons.
And then we got Ahsoka fighting Vader for the first time. And then we're seeing Anakin's face. We're hearing Anakin's voice. And you're just kind of like, how did we get here? So the show goes from just like, crackers and cheese to just this steak dinner.
That's a really accurate description.
It's a simple little Star Wars snack for kids to just like, what, like if you just fast forwarded, you would be like, what?
It's got some deeper storylines than Clone Wars.
It really does.
Yes,
and
it does.
Clone Wars is dark, but I remember the last few episodes of Rebels. I'm getting chill bumps just thinking about it. I remember just being like, man, this is thick. This is just really thick, intense right now. And then they introduced Thrawn, and of course, I remember Timothy Zahn, who wrote all the original Thrawn books, made this big, long, emotional post like, I can't believe I'm seeing my original character on screen for the first time. And he was probably just like, and I believe the voice actor was the same that we got to see in the live action.
It is.
Which is
he played. Yeah.
That's right. We talked about that. Mm-hmm. So that was really cool. I think he does a great Thrawn. There's just, I have it ranked as number 7 because there's just nothing bad about Rebels. Clone Wars kind of started it all, and we'll get to that opposite the show. It kind of started it all with new Star Wars content, in my opinion. Rebels almost kind of took the torch and ran faster, I think, in some aspects because it just, I don't know, it just hit something different. And it wasn't as long. Clone Wars is a long show. There's like, 12 seasons?
7.
It just feels like and there's a lot of episodes. Rebels isn't quite that lengthy, but it's just really good. All the characters in Rebels are very original. There's no one that just feels derivative. Like there's not another Wookiee. There's not another Han Solo. There's not another Leia. Everyone's pretty much their own character. I will say this is just came to my mind, but one of my favorite things about Rebels was the episode where the boy has to infiltrate that Imperial Academy with all the younger guys. I've always wanted a show or even a game where it's like, let's see the other side. Let's see the Imperials who maybe just signed up to the Imperial Academy, like Luke had talked about, even just to get away from home, just for a better life. They hated the Empire, but you know what? There was a local garrison and there was a recruiter, and how they make some money, and they got out of their, their crappy situation and got stuck in some pretty tough situations. Interestingly, Solo, the movie, kind of touched in on that when he became the kind of a mud trooper there for a minute. That episode where they're kind of like, Imperial cadets in training, and I think Wedge Antilles is a kid.
That's what I was about to say. That's where we meet Wedge, yeah.
And so, and really cool. That's really cool stuff. We get to see that, the Empire isn't just monolithic stormtroopers, all bad. There's this, everybody kind of gets sucked into this Empire stuff. Not all of them are bad. Some of them are just in it. You just can't go wrong with Rebels. You just can't go wrong. There was one other thing I was going to say. Of course, we get to see Ahsoka there for a minute, but it's great. It's really good. And skinny lightsabers, that's a critique. Star Destroyers, like the neck, like the command deck neck, like you can kind of see it actually. It was kind of a little bit longer than you see in movies and stuff. I remember at that point, and I just now remember that. This is little. This is like little stuff. This is really little.
Getting very nitpicky.
Very nitpicky, but it was just interesting. I think it's just the animation style, but I remember thinking, why is that Star Destroyer kind of like stuck? It's just like a little stretched out there, but I love the show. we need to do a whole podcast just on Rebels, really, because there's a lot to unpack.
No kidding. Yeah. Well, cool. Let's jump into 9, and that's going to be Star Wars Episode 2: Attack of the Clones. This is the actual number 2 for Megan, correct?
Yeah. Yes, because you had the Clone Wars as 2.
This would be.
You had this ranked as number 2.
This would be my number 2.
So we're going to let you go first on this one. You got a lot of explaining to do, so.
Okay, so yes, It is. I do have it ranked very high, but that's almost because it builds up into such a great story that you can't help but love it, or at least that's how it is for me. Yes, there are some. Any scene on Naboo is a cringe fest of cringe and hormones.
Mhm.
But I mean,
Oh, yeah.
what do you expect from a teenage boy who is seeing his first childhood crush for the first time again, and he can't do anything about it because he's now a space wizard? I
For
mean,
the first time in a decade, I
for
believe
the
it's
first
a
time in a
10-year
decade.
gap.
So, and
He
like,
was like,
I don't know a single eloquent teenage boy. So I'm pretending that those lines aren't bad writing. It's a teenage boy and his teenage semi-adult girlfriend. But I mean, when you get past that, there's some great fight scenes.
Oh,
I mean, we get all of the Jedi in the arena fighting at
Mhm.
the end. We get to see Jango Fett straight up decapitated by Mace Windu. At the end of the day, you can't say it's a terrible movie because when you go point for point, there is more good in this movie than there is bad. It's just the only problem is the bad is spoken, where the good is just action. But I over the years, I have begun to love this movie more than when I first saw it. But there we go. That's my defense of Attack of the Clones.
I'll go last.
Yeah, I always tell people when I explain this movie is as like kind of like Megan, what you were saying. The dialogue scenes with Anakin and Padme, I feel like are the lowest points easily in the entire movie. But I always tell people like if you look at everything outside of that from a story standpoint, like Obi-Wan's story arc in this movie is really good and really interesting.
Mhm.
He's my favorite character anyway. So like whenever that part of the movie is going on, that's always super interesting to me. And so like with all the discovering the clone army and battling Jango Fett on Camino, which is a super cool action sequence. I always remember him falling off the tower and like using the force to like Indiana
Mhm.
Jones' way up to the deck there. And yeah, I don't know. It's just got a lot of cool moments. And I don't know. The speeder chase at the beginning is when he dives out the window. I'm like, that is the coolest. Like, yeah,
Nerves of
it's
steel.
yeah, it's funny because he's the by the book Jedi, right? He's the one that wants to do things the way the council wants him to, which was completely opposite of how his master was. And then he's going, and you see that sort of Anakin side of him come out. He's like diving through a window, or he's,
Yes.
and it's like he's always sort of trying to toe that line a little bit, where he's got a little bit of that young nature that he has in Phantom Menace, where he's a little bit more reckless, maybe, and a little more impulsive, still there, but he's also trying to be a master. And so there's a kind of a cool thing there. But yeah, I love all the actions parts of this movie. I love the story. It's not, like I said, it's not always executed great with the dialogue with Anakin and Padme, but the story itself is really interesting. And there's a lot of really cool elements to it if you just stop and look at it. It's just, like I said, it's in the execution, I think, where I find the issues. But no, I enjoy this movie for the most part. It's just, small things with those specific things I've mentioned.
I think this movie kind of gets a bad reputation, I guess, because of the dialogue. Like you said, it's the complaints of the poor story and too much politics and fake looking CGI are pretty unfounded to me. A few moments of the kind of cliche dialogue are kind of what blows it, but it's such a small part that if you don't have to pay attention to them. It's a grand, sweeping, large scale adventure movie. Story is mostly great. I'm not going to say completely, but there's only a few stretches that kind of drag. Special effects and action are top notch. I mean, that's why we watch Star Wars. So I didn't know it isn't a world-class lesson in dialogue. But between the visuals, action, and the heavenly John Williams score,
Yes,
it is entertainment of the highest degree.
Yeah, I have it ranked at 12 just solely on the Anakin and Padme stuff that goes on, because it was too cringy for me to like. I literally get to the point where like I almost like skip over all that. Like I literally just like skip it completely and don't even watch it because I can't. So yeah, that's kind of what brought it down to 12 for me. But the action's great. Love the action. Not as good as episode 3, but I think it's a little bit better than episode 1 to an extent, because like episode 1 only had like, I would say the Darth Maul fight between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, I feel like was probably like really the only like great action scene in.
Well, the middle portion of 1 doesn't have the first part has a decent bit, but the middle portion doesn't until you get to like the final act. So yeah. I see what you're saying.
So yeah, I think the action's great, and then also we get introduced to Count Dooku, and Count Dooku is one of my probably more favorite Siths in the Star Wars universe. I love Count Dooku. I just like his lightsaber. What do you call it again? Hilt, not hilt. What is it?
His
what do they
cane
call
saber.
Yeah,
it's a hilt. You're right. Hilt's right.
Yeah, hilt. Okay, yeah. So like the little curve to it, like I just love that. I think that looks so sick. And also Christopher Lee.
It's more dignified. It's classy.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Christopher Lee just kills his role in it. I think. I mean, he's a great actor too. Like, and the fact that he like served in, I think, what was it, World War I or something like that. And so like when George Lucas was like explaining to him how to like use the lightsaber and stuff, and he just like pulled him aside. He's like, "Have you ever fought in a war before? Because I have. Like, this is how you do it. Like, type deal. Like that was just badass in the moment there. Yeah, I mean, story's not obviously anything to write home about, but like I think the action makes up for it. So
I think the second one is probably the most fun of all 3 prequels. The third one is just real, Revenge of the Sith is really good, but it's very sad too, very dark and heartbreaking. The second one is just fun. It's just fun, and you get the scene with his mom dying, which is gut wrenching as well. But when it comes to the teenager that's dealing with a lot of darkness inside of him, we really see that in episode 2, mixed with hormones and just conflict, and whose main mentor isn't really. I mean, I'm not trying to knock on Obi-Wan Kenobi here, but he's not a elderly figure. He's like an older brother to him.
He's only like what, 5 or 6 years older than him, maybe.
I'm not quite sure. Don, you would know that. How much older is he supposed to be?
I don't know technically. I don't know canon wise what the age gap is, but I know like in Phantom Menace, I think Anakin's probably like 8 or 9, and then Obi-Wan's probably like 16, 17, maybe 18.
Yeah,
he's
like
late teens
in episode 1, and Anakin was like 12. So, so he's not that much older than him. So they're kind of like, their master and apprentice relationship is there. But you can see in the very beginning of episode 2, they're butting heads, over like Padme, and they're talking about politics and stuff. But the movie's
Obi-Wan's not like, remember too, like in Phantom Menace, Obi-Wan became his master at the teenage age that he was. Yes. And so he really wasn't ready to take that on whenever he did. And so I think that's part of that inexperience too.
At the very end of the movie, he knighted him at the very end. I don't know if you remember that or not. But anyway, the movie as a whole is it's action packed. It had, the cringy dialogue is obvious. It definitely gets a bad rep. I think over the years, a lot of people have come back and liked it more. I remember like 15 years ago, people were they hated on it. And nowadays people seem to love it a lot more. And I remember going to see this as a kid. I remember going to see episode 1 as a kid, but I was still pretty young. But this one I really remember seeing because I was older. And I remember at the very end when, you get the clash of the Jedi and the droids on one end coming in right there in the middle of the Geonosis arena. I remember just laughing as a kid. I was verbally laughing. I was having so much fun as a kid. I mean, we got to see different colored lightsabers for the first time in this movie, interestingly enough. Like, there was a lot of cool stuff. Attack of the Clones is one of those movies that actually really set some foundations for the entire universe later. A lot can be tied back to it. You got Django, you got Camino, you got Duke. I mean, it's
The
just
beginning of Boba Fett's trauma.
yeah, that's pretty bad. But
that was a really good Clone Wars arc too, with him hunting down Mace Windu.
Right. But the movie as a whole is great, and then of course the end with Yoda fighting for the first time. How could we forget to mention that? I mean, that was just like, I remember people would like in code be like, "You need to go see the new Star Wars movie. The ending's great." Well, why? Just go see it. You know, that people. I remember even people talking about it. I have nothing wrong to say. It's just I remember getting this on DVD, watching it a million times, watching the commentary, going through all the little DVD bonus features and the little Easter eggs on the menu of the DVD. I mean,
DVD? Dude, we had this on VCR. What are you talking about?
No, I had it. My family had it on DVD.
He was high tech. He got it on DVD.
DVD player.
He wasn't poor.
Well, we were, so.
And then there was a zillion Legos out for this movie. There was a zillion toys out for this movie. There was a zillion games out for this movie, and then like a little bit after it. I mean, we think we have a lot of Star Wars now. Well, they did a lot with the episode 2, a lot surrounding it, just marketing and video games and toys.
And it was the first time Yoda was not a puppet.
Exactly. And he threw down some lightsaber combat, which was amazing to this day. I think the really slow part, or I'm sorry, the worst part is just the acting. And my major point is this. I did read that a lot of George Lucas was so excited to do this movie because, episode 1 had done well, that a lot of he didn't do many takes. It would be like they would do like 1 or 2. He liked it. They would go to the next scene. So a lot of what we see with dialogue is not like the 9th or 12th cut. It's like the 2nd or even the 1st. So, sometimes actors need to do it 20 times to really get it out. And I've heard from several sources that he wasn't rushing, but he wasn't trying to like bring out their Shakespearean thespian in them to really try to be, romantic and talk about their feelings in front of a fire without it being cringy 14-year-old. But that's the way it came across. And I hate it for the actors because you see later that they're very good actors and they got a lot of depth to them. But you can tell that they were under a little bit of pressure because they were trying to get to the good stuff.
Yep.
And it doesn't even really carry. And even at the end of the movie, the acting's not as bad. So I think it's just like some of those first to middle acting was just really, really rushed. And I wonder if George regrets that in some aspects. But the movie's wonderful. I have it number 4.
I would imagine he does to some degree. But, it's just kind of, it is what it is now. Nothing much you can do about it. But, let's, do y'all need to pause for a second?
No, we're good.
Okay, just checking. All right, number 8.
Might have to run off here, but I'm okay right now.
Gotcha. I got you.
Number 1.
Number 1. Yeah, Andrew, you get to go first.
All right. Phantom Menace gets the worst reputation, I think, for a lot of reasons. This was the first Star Wars movie I saw as a kid in theaters, period. Watched all the original trilogy on VHS to death with my parents, and I remember go on YouTube and watch like the original teaser trailer and then the full trailer for this movie. I was so psyched as like a 7-year-old boy. I mean, I was like the same age as Anakin as well. So at the time, it was like I was like, that's me, as a little boy. The pod racing was just a fantastic scene. George Lucas came out in 1999, so I was 8. The pod racing scene was a bit of a callback to the original Ben-Hur movie per George Lucas. He really liked those scenes, so he did it in kind of a sci-fi way. But like the CGI had come so far. For 99, George Lucas and LucasArts had pioneered so much CGI that, and even to this day,
they're the reason why Photoshop exists.
Right. So there's just so much with this movie.
I can go on a list of like the things that George Lucas helped create in the visual realm. I mean, he's done Tons of things.
In the theater, even though this wasn't done with a digital camera, it was still done on film. There was a lot of CGI. The story is easy to follow. Just forget Star Wars for a minute. It still feels like a Star Wars movie, which is very subjective. But the story, anybody can watch this movie. The story is easy to follow. The plot is simple. There's politics, but it's not too deep and it's not too real world. It's just easy to follow. There's this beautiful musical score behind it. John Williams, need I say more, but the Phantom Menace soundtrack is just so good. I just can't stress that enough. Naboo's a beautiful planet. So we forget this is episode 1. We haven't seen anything yet. So for this to be the introductory to Star Wars is really interesting. And for it to be a prequel, I remember my parents even saying, no, this is before the movies. This is, there is no Darth Vader. And I remember even as a kid watching it, and it still felt Star Wars to me. It didn't feel like just some sci-fi. The acting is actually better than Attack of the Clones. If you watch it, the acting's actually better. Now, it's not exactly Broadway, but it's good. It's good, and I don't know. I just really like it. The aesthetic is good. This is the beginning of Darth Vader's journey as a little boy, and there's just a lot with this movie I really, really like, and then the ending of it, the parade at the end. I'm getting choked up. It's my childhood. Like, this movie's my childhood. Like, we were watching it the other day, and me and you were tearing up. We were like, it's just a good movie. Like, it's easy to follow, and it's visually beautiful. And then, of course, I think sometimes fans and critics will focus on one thing in a movie, and they think the entire movie's that. For instance, Jar Jar Binks would be this one, and then the bad acting for Attack of the Clones. Jar Jar Binks is not the Phantom Menace. He's the comedic relief. Every movie has comedic relief. Our little baby is unhappy.
I can't tell.
I'll tell my opinion
She'll
last.
Come last. But he's kind of, he talks funny and he's kind of odd, but I don't know. As a kid, I just remember not even thinking Jar Jar was just not something I cared about. He was funny, but I think people just focus on like a silly thing and make it like the big problem, and he's not the problem of the movie.
Well, I've heard it was Chris Gore, he has a website / YouTube channel that's called Film Threat, but he's like a legit Hollywood critic. Really cool channel if you like reviews on basically any movie that comes out ever. But he said his point to this was that the character of Jar Jar, the problem is not the character, the problem is screen time. He's like, if they just reduced the screen time, the character's fine. It's just that he's on the screen so much in that movie that even George Lucas has said, I probably could have toned him down some.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I can agree with that for sure.
That's probably the best point I've ever heard on the character.
Yeah, but I can't. I mean, it's my favorite movie because it was my first, and it's a little bit of bias there. But just quality movie, it's really, really, really good. And I just don't have anything bad to say about it. I think the only thing I could really say is that the Phantom Menace title itself is really alluding to Palpatine, which we barely see. And a lot of the Star Wars movies are about Palpatine. Someone on Reddit said a long time ago that the Rise of Skywalker should have been named the Phantom Menace because it's like this guy keeps coming back. And I was kind of like, that makes a lot of sense. And he had a whole list of like how each movie should have been named differently, except for a few of them. But that's really it. And again, the marketing for episode 1 was just incredible. I mean, there was toys, Legos. There's still a subreddit or a Twitter or Twitter X, where it's like, I mean, they even had vending machines that were like marketing episode 1. And there's still one Star Wars episode 1 pod racing vending Pepsi machine somewhere in like Oakland, California. And people go and take pictures of it because they're like, it's the last one. And Pepsi won't change it because it's kind of got this meme following now. But But it was
But
just.
let's be honest, they could have done zero marketing for this movie, and it still would have done great because it was the first one we'd had in 15, 16 years, whatever it was.
Yes.
So.
Good games came out of this too. A lot of my opinions of movies come from like what games were around at that time.
The pod racing game on Nintendo 64 was top notch.
See, now you're talking my language now.
Yeah.
So there was
that.
It was just prevalent in my life. Like it was everywhere. This movie was everywhere. Every kid was wearing a Darth Maul shirt on Halloween. Like it was just kind of that sort of thing. It was like a cultural phenomenon. But I love it, and it's my favorite Star Wars movie.
Well, there you go.
This movie, I mean, it gets a lot of hate, and I do understand. That's why I've got it kind of ranked at 11. It's just kind of that situation that was the number I had left. So it's not a bad. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. Jar Jar Binks does feel like it's a little too much. He's a little forced. My biggest gripe with it is Anakin in certain situations. To me, I watch it again. It's just, he wouldn't do that. Like when he flies the ship into the enemy ship at the end, near the end of the movie, I'm like, he's just a kid. He wouldn't do that. But I mean, they nailed the story. It's a brilliant start. Qui-Gon's actually my favorite Jedi.
Mine too.
So, Darth Maul's a brilliant villain. Duel of the Fates is, God, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's right up there with my favorite score in the any of the Star Wars films. So,
one quick thing I got to drop. There was a critique of this was a podcast earlier, a video podcast, and they were critiquing The Last Jedi, and they were trying to figure out how they felt about the movie. And this one guy said, Star Wars has this weird dichotomy sometimes where you'll have in the same movie Jar Jar Binks and Duel of the Fates in the same movie. And I was like, that's a great point because Duel of the Fates, the movie was really good, but to this day, when those doors open up, and there's this guy standing there, and the music starts playing, and then all of a sudden, the dual staff saber comes out. I mean, we'd never seen anything like that, and that reused like meme of like Joe Rogan at the UFC fight where he's like, oh, with the guys,
Yep.
I saw one the other day, and I thought about this podcast. It was like me, 8 years old, when Darth Maul ignited both sabers, and there's like, because that's how it was. People were just like, what? But to this day, that will give me chill bumps because then you got like this, giant choir and and it's just like it's just amazing, So you got Jar Jar Binks and Duel of the Fates at the end. You're like, what is this movie? It's just got so many layers to it.
Yeah.
You've been talking the whole time.
No.
Yeah, he just finished. Yeah.
The hot take. I think Jar Jar Binks honestly is a great character. I think he's freaking hilarious. Sorry.
Whoa.
Sorry. We can cut that out.
Yeah, we're cutting that out for sure.
Yeah, he's freaking hilarious though.
You're just making my job harder. So all you're doing.
Sorry, bud. Yeah, I mean, hot take. Yeah, I think Jar Jar Binks is freaking hilarious. So like, I mean, I don't know. I think he gets like too much hate personally. But yeah, like the screen time, he probably could be down, like brought down a little bit. I mean, he does have a lot of screen time in that movie. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think again, like it doesn't have like much action in it though, but like the action that you get is top tier, especially Duel of Fates. I mean, like that was single-handedly probably like I would say number 2 probably for like best fight scene in Star Wars, I think, and number 1 obviously will be coming up whenever we get up to that movie. For me at least. But yeah, I mean, Duel of Fates, I mean, seeing Darth Maul, the dual saber, like that was just so cool. I mean, that's the first time we obviously ever saw that. So like that was just amazing. His character in general, just cool. I mean, just like badass, the whole like makeup he has on. I mean, just like his face just looks very intimidating and just creepy, and so like that was cool. Yeah, I don't really have like anything I would say bad to say about it necessarily. I mean, Qui-Gon Jinn's awesome too. I love Qui-Gon Jinn. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I don't. I'm gonna go against Drew a little bit here. He said that He thought the story was top notch. I feel like this one of the 6 original ones has one of the weaker stories, and it's not that it's bad, but I feel like the entire story is just not contrived, but the entire story is just generated to get Anakin in the picture, essentially. And so I wouldn't say it feels the most organic because, like, think about it from our perspective. You know, when I'm not like the first part where they're on 2 Jedi, they're sent out to just resolve some dispute. That's pretty normal in the lives of a Jedi and a Padawan, and so that part's fine. But it's like you get into the ship and you go, you know, they get the queen and they escape with her and all that, and then they get into the ship and it's damaged and it's like, oh, we have to go land on this planet. You know, where can we land? And it's like, how about Tatooine? And we're like, oh, yeah, well, I know where this is going. It's like, so it feels a little bit like shoehorned in slightly. It's not bad. I'm not saying it's bad by any means, but I feel like it's one of the first 6. It's the one that feels the least organic, I guess you'd say, maybe of the 6. And so that's just a minor thing. It's not a big deal for me. But like, yeah, for me, the reason I have this one up slightly above Attack of the Clones is, to me, the action sequences in this one are maybe more epic in some ways than Attack of the Clones, except for maybe the arena sequence is probably a little bit more. But like, I think of like right off the bat when the movie starts, I can just remember the smoke coming through the door and the 2 lightsabers igniting. And then just taking out all the droids, and then they're like force running across the hallway, and it's like a sort of a really cool introduction to what's going on. And then they're, you know, diving into the Gungan city, and that's super cool. And I don't know, it's got some really cool locations and cool, you know, the pod race looks like still holds up really well visually today, better than even some modern movies do. I love that sequence, always have, and obviously the final act with, outside of maybe the Gungans versus the droid army, which I'm not the biggest fan of because of Jar Jar, but like them attacking the city with them, you know, shooting their guns and rappelling up to the window, and then obviously the Duel of the Fates and maybe the best lightsaber sequence outside of, you know, Revenge of the Sith. It's just kind of, I don't know. There's a lot of really fun, epic feel to this movie, and I don't know. I feel like when I watch this one, I don't get bored watching it because there's just too much just entertaining stuff in it, even if it's not the most compelling in terms of maybe as compelling story-wise as some of the others. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't have a lot of negative to say either. I grew up on this movie. My first movie in theaters was not. I actually didn't get to see any of the prequels in theaters. So, but yeah, no, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
No, it just means we're old.
I think you're last.
Well, so I was old enough to see the last 2 and 3. At least 3 I know, but we just, for whatever reason, we didn't get to go see them in theaters. So
I was 1 when this one came out.
Oh
God, I was 9.
no.
Yeah, I was 9 when this came out, and me and my parents and my great grandmother went to go see this. And so this movie is definitely, of course, obviously in my top 5. And this, for Star Wars fans who had been through the drought of almost no Star Wars content from the time of the last of the original trilogy to them, this was a drink of fresh water. Even only being 9 years old, my dad, we watched the VHSs of the original Star Wars movies all the time. I watched the Ewok cartoon that you refused to put on this list.
Sorry.
I even saw the holiday special.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So at 9 years old, I was about as rabid as some of the 40-year-old guys in that theater with them. And the best way that I can explain the attitude of this movie when it came out, is all good Star Wars fans need to find and watch the movie called Fanboys, which is it's a movie about a group of guys. They find out that their friend has cancer. So they decide to break into the Lucas Ranch to get the first copy of Phantom Menace.
Before it came out.
Before it came out to theaters. It's a great movie. A lot of fan service in it. A lot of Star Wars characters in it. Carrie Fisher's in it. Guy who plays Mace Windu is in. Not Mace Windu.
Samuel L. Jackson?
No, I just had a really bad brain fart. Seth
Rogen's in it too.
Yeah, Seth Rogen's in it. Darth Maul, the guy who plays Darth Maul, is in it. Kevin Smith and Jace and Jay are in it. Like it's a great movie. You should all go see it. It's wonderful. But that kind of explains, just how rabid we are when this movie came out. And when you go in, like you said, you're just watching some Jedi do their regular Jedi business, and it turns into this huge war that you weren't even expecting. And you get into Duel of the Fates. I'm just rambling at this point because y'all mostly said it all. It's just wonderful. And we were all just so excited to go see it.
Yes.
I remember people camped out in front of theaters to get the tickets. It was
everywhere.
One of the first cultural phenomenons that I was a part of.
Yes, same.
So that's almost more why it's in my top 5 than the movie itself, even though the movie itself is great. I was Queen Amidala for 3 years in a row for Halloween. The only reason why I stopped because my costume finally got too small. But it was just a fantastic movie for the time. It was the first Star Wars that some of us had gotten in our lifetime. It was fantastic. I loved it. I have nothing truly bad to say about it, except for the little yippee that Anakin does. That was a little weird. Besides that, it's a great movie. I have no qualms with it.
Even though I said the story is really good and there's really nothing wrong with it, the only thing is the queen of this entire planet, and she's an elected queen, is 14.
16.
14.
Oh, yeah, she was elected when she was 14.
And as someone who just got back from a youth trip for our church this weekend in Gatlinburg with a bunch of teenagers and 14 years old, if you elect a 14-year-old to be your monarch, Naboo is just not in a good place. Naboo's not a good place. That's the only hard thing to believe.
Look, this is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. They could have been it could have been back to biblical era where when you were 12, you had to be.
And of all the people to elect, Padme's the one you want to elect. They just lucked out with her, but I just even remember as a kid, she's just a girl. Why is she the queen?
She fooled us for a whole movie, so
she did. She did.
Her and Keira Knightley were amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That blew my mind as much as anything. The fact that Keira Knightley was the decoy. I didn't even realize it until later in my life, but.
I honestly didn't even know that till now. So
really,
yeah, I actually did not. They
crazy. Look a lot alike.
No, they do. Yeah,
100%. Sound exactly alike.
I think for a long time when I was
oh my gosh, you're twins.
Yeah, I think for a long time when I was a kid, I thought they were the same person. I'm pretty sure. So.
Might have, yeah. Why is Padme in the Caribbean?
Yeah. All right. Well, number 7, it is Andor, and this is obviously season 1 because season 2 is yet to release. We're getting that in April. Yes, let's go.
Oh.
I'm gonna start because I love Andor, and I'm not the highest on it, surprisingly, but this was the show that tried to renew some of my faith in Disney Star Wars, but mainly just solidified my love for Tony Gilroy as a writer / director. And I'm a big Jason Bourne's trilogy fan, and he obviously was the one who wrote and directed, or at least wrote. Yeah. So this one has serious vibes like that in terms of the style, but it's also just how can we take a character that isn't that that popular necessarily from a movie that was a spinoff of other movies, and make it really compelling and really interesting and really gritty, and they take it and they just make it all of that. And it's one of those that when I remember watching it, I'm like, yeah, it's slow and it takes a long time to build up, but boy, when it pays off, it really pays off. And I think that's like the way, just the way they did it, very unique, like 3-part story arcs out along an entire larger 12 episode arc was just a really unique way of doing it. And it really just gave us a good idea of how much the lines were blurred when it comes to how the rebellion had to operate, and how they had to do a lot of shady things to get the empire, to defeat the empire. And Andor, Cassian Andor's kind of the perfect figure to fit into that sort of gray area, as he is at the beginning of Rogue One. So the Empire is menacing as can be in this. The most menacing version outside of like Darth Vader stalking down a hallway in like the original trilogy. And so I don't know, it's just so well written. There's really just nothing bad I can say about it. And I don't know, it's just, I told people, I was like, I've never had so much fun just listening to two people talk in a cave, in just because it's so, it sucks you in, the dialogue and everything. So I don't know, the tension, the build up, the payoff is just all super well acted, well written, looks visually pleasing, and yeah, that's just I'm it's the only thing Star Wars right now that I'm excited for in terms of season 2. So can't say enough good things about it.
I mean, I'm right there with you. Something that I thought I loved about this was that Cassian Andor is not really the protagonist here in this show. It's really like the Rebel Alliance as a whole, and Cassian's kind of the perspective in which you're seeing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He's a regular guy. He's down on his luck. So we also get to see it from the perspectives of some of the architects like Mon Mothma and Luthen, who I would call he airs on more of the terrorist side than he's playing a more violent game than everybody else is.
But he's probably the most compelling character in the entire show, to be honest.
Agreed.
There's nothing that I can like imagine or think that would have made it much better. It may not be for kids, I guess, or for everyone's taste. It is kind of slow, dialogue heavy, but man, it's so good. I've seen some of they've talked about season 2 being better than season 1, and if it's better, then
gets your blood flowing, doesn't it? It's like
that's a bold statement if they're saying that, but if it's
the actors are the ones saying that, like they're more excited. They're more excited about season 2, so that makes me. We'll see.
Season 2 is supposed to be, I think, a little bit faster paced too, which I'm like, if you can combine this awesome writing and acting with like a faster pace, I'm like, ooh, I get a little twitchy, I'm like,
yeah, that show's really, so good. Yeah, I think this is probably I think I like this. I do like it more than Mandalorian. I think this is probably like the best Star Wars content we've gotten in the last, I don't even know, like what decade, probably close to it. It feels like
since Clone Wars and Rebels, probably.
Yeah. So they just, like you guys said, it's just a little slow, but I don't know why. I feel like it could be considered slow, but they do a good job at keeping you intrigued, even though it is slightly slow.
I would just say it's slow, and you don't really care that it's slow. No, that's the best thing about it.
Not at all. Yeah. And they started off hot too with the first episode with him. I don't know what planet he was on, but just him getting taken by the 2 guards, and then he just full on just murders them like it was nothing, and that just had me very intrigued at that point, because I was like, okay, this looks like it's gonna have some pretty good action, all that type of stuff. Also has Andy Serkis in it, and I love Andy Serkis.
Same.
One of my more favorite actors, and he just does such an amazing job every time he's on screen. And I literally felt like almost like heartbroken when like he said he couldn't swim during that scene. And I was like, "Are you serious? Like, we're not gonna probably see this man ever again? He's probably gonna drown or something, you know?" Like, that sucked. And the story is just, again, it just keeps you like wanting more. And like, I'm so excited for season 2. Like, I can't wait for it to come out. They did such a great job of the story. Like you said, the visuals as well. The visuals are really good. I mean, they were stunning.
That prison sequence, man, that was some of the most impressive technical work I've ever seen on a project.
Mm-hmm.
The way they did that, I was like, the ingenuity and the imagination there. I'm like, this is peak. Yeah.
And then like the prison scene just like kept you like on your toes. Like they had like a good like tension there where you're like just almost like gives you like anxiety, almost like nervous in a way, like knowing like what's gonna happen. And they did just a really good job with that. So all around, just amazing. Loved it. Yeah, so we got to get your hot take here because 15. That's
that's pretty low.
Well, I loved Andor. There were just some things. There was obviously 14 other things that I liked more. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. Huh?
I said, explain yourself.
Well, the show started for me. I truly got interested in the show when Andy Serkis came on the screen. When he is in the prison, that's like the best part for me. So my biggest thing was it does start off pretty slow. I wasn't a fan of the first heist. It was slow to me. I did like Mon Mothma's stuff at the beginning. I thought that was really interesting. Like I said, I just liked a few things more than Andor. My biggest issue with Andor, honestly, was you mean to tell me nobody was cleaning the top of that shower so long that he was still able to get his money where he hid it from? No one cleaned the top of that shower. It's still there. That's a gross shower. But I mean, I have nothing bad to say about it. I enjoyed it. There was just some stuff that I liked more. And Andy Serkis was in the treasure.
I got it ranked as number 3. First off, Andor was the most surprisingly good show that we got that no one saw coming. I remember when they announced it, we're like, oh yeah, Andor from Rogue One. When Rogue One, I think I have number 2 on my list. I mean, Andor's a great character, but
you can't say that. You can't do that. We're not there yet. What are you doing?
Whoops, my bad. I honestly can't remember.
You're not even paying attention.
I just remember thinking, oh, that's cool, and then just kind of moving on. But I remember when I started watching, it just pulled you in, and it's. I would agree that it's slow, but I would say the better word might be more methodical. It's not slow. It's just it's not fast. It's not slow. It's not fast either. No. It's just kind of there. And I remember thinking, all right, this is a little slower than what we're used to, but they're definitely building up. And it's gritty is probably the overarching word of this whole show, because it's just it's the down and dirty rebel side. We really get to see the true oppression of the Empire for the first time from kind of a civilian standpoint. Yes, we see stormtroopers like rounding up people and Star Destroyers looming over and Darth Vader, etc. But like we got to see like kind of the municipal oppression, I guess you could say.
The minutia.
All the way, yeah, that too. All the way down to like just the small shops, and the everyday people. Interestingly, this is one of the few Star Wars that was a little bit more blue in content because we saw that couple like laying in bed together. I mean, they had their clothes on, but there was adult implications there. That's the first time we really saw that on screen. I remember seeing it. Me and Megan were like, wow, this is getting kind of this Star Wars. All right.
It's definitely one of the most adult.
It had just an adult feel, not in a gratuitous, like overly sexualized or anything, but it was just, there was implication there. Which I think is interesting because a lot of people online, and I'm on Reddit. I am a Redditor, but I hate Reddit because that's how it works. But one of the more things was like, oh, Star Wars just isn't dark enough. It's not gritty enough. Well, they got it with Andor, and they did it in a very good way that wasn't overly like too adult or not too try-hardy. It was that perfect medium. We got to see the oppression of the ISB. The ISB is one of my favorite aspects of the Empire. They're very buttoned up. They're very clean. They're very sterile. The lady, the officer, the special agent, whose name I can't remember, does a fantastic job of the ISB agent because she's obsessed with perfection, and she's like at that OC. She's kind of the Les Mis character. Javert. She's very Javert in like Les Mis. Like she's like got this thing that she can't let go, and she's gonna hunt it down. And you get to see the different ISB agents, vying for attention and power and accolades within their heavily aristocratic military secret service. And we get to see the character who's the art collector guy, who's the rebel. He said his name. Luthen is fantastic. Yeah. I call him Harkonnen in my brain because he's in the Doom movie, and I'm like, who's that guy? He's a great actor, fantastic actor. He's got that double face. He's two-faced. He's real like kind of eccentric with his art, but really he's like this solemn terrorist, like you said. He's really he's borderline terrorist, as well as the other guy from Rogue One with the breathing apparatus. Saul Guerrero, thank you. Saul Guerrero is definitely towing that line. So Andor as a whole was just super surprising with what we got. I don't think anybody saw the quality coming down the pipe from this movie. And the cinematography is fantastic. The visuals are fantastic. The whole prison sequence was unexpected, but so good. And like you said, there's like this kind of healthy anxiety we have. We're kind of like, oh gosh, the floor is electrified, and they got guns to their head and they're building these parts. What is it? And we find out later it's apparatuses for the Death Star at the very end. I remember freaking out about that. And just like you feel like you're one of the inmates in line. In this prison, because they're all just like, did you hear about what happened on Section 17? What did you hear? You're right there in it. Like you almost feel this claustrophobic feeling of just not knowing. And you just get that the Empire, you really get that sense of the Empire just being very bad, just oppressively bad, not just, dumb, like just like they're doing some stuff. And then Mon Mothma's great. Her political intrigue is very interesting. I'm so glad they brought her back from Rogue One because she killed it in that. And Mon Mothma needs more screen time, I think, because there's a lot of like unspoken political things about how the rebellion is formed that we just didn't get and we're getting now. And I think in the next season, we're going to see her daughter actually probably be very pro-imperial. They're kind of hinting at that. Like she's kind of enjoying this rich, and I think Mon Mothma's husband too, a little bit to some degree. They're kind of enjoying this lavish, high Coruscanti lifestyle. They're not exactly, what's wrong with the Empire? We're living great. I think we're going to see some internal conflicts that I'm sure some politicians deal with in real life. Their family, immediate family may not believe the way they do. It's just very human, very organic. Like you said, Jonathan, it's just got this really relatable feel all throughout the movie. And then, of course, that first mission where they're like all in the forest, that's probably the slowest part, is when they're in the forest trying to plan their attack on that Imperial base. But it's just really, really good. I'm so hyped for the second one because I believe it's the first adult Star Wars thing we've gotten that wasn't initially written for kids. This was not rated Y7 from its inception, and then eventually got higher ratings because adults were watching it because it was so good. This is different. There's a whole lot to unpack in Andor, and the fact that it's Cassian Andor's characters is the title name. Like you said, it's almost like it's not even really about him. I mean, it is about him. It's his perspective. And we get to see how the rebellion started just from kind of regular people or just people that weren't really pro-imperial and why they became that way. Just great, just really great. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do with season 2, because if it's this on par with season 1, I'll be perfectly happy.
Even if it's like slightly not as good, I'll be content. Like as long as it's on in that same ballpark, I'm going to be like, okay, I'm satisfied.
It just has so many goosebump moments where you just really feel for the characters. Like you're really in there. A lot of Star Wars, you're just watching it, enjoying the visuals. This one, you really feel in it. It's like a book. It's like a good book where you really feel you're in there, like shoulder to shoulder with them in the prison, or right there in that gritty junk shop, trying to get money. You're just really in there. So I love it. I really love it. I don't have anything bad to say about it at all. I mean, there was no part where I was like, or It was all really, really good. And I remember every day at work when it was time for the show to come, I remember being very excited to come home and watch it. It was like Mando season 1 all over again. I was really looking forward to what was next. And I had no idea. That was another thing. I had no idea what was coming next. It was one of those shows I was like, I have no idea what this next episode, sometimes you can kind of guess, you kind of feel it out. I had no clue. I had no clue what was coming next. Interesting point. That scientist, I believe he's in Andor. No. He's in Mando, and I don't know if shows up in Andor. He's the scientist guy that was like probing on Grogu. He was had glasses.
Dr. Pershing.
Yes, I think we see him get lobotomized at the end of this season in Andor. Is it Andor? Because they break into this Star Destroyer. When he's like,
how vague? Yeah.
I can't remember.
No, never mind. I'm thinking about a different show. This is Andor. I'm sorry. I got to meet him not too long ago. I should have said that when we were talking about Mando season 2. But yeah, anyway, Andor's great. Highly anticipated for the next season. When does it come out? You say April?
April, yeah.
That's gonna be great. That's gonna be great.
I'll be honest. Like March, we get Daredevil Born Again, and April we get Andor, and I'm like, ooh. Which a little bit more pessimistic about Daredevil, but that's different.
I was about to say Daredevil's not going to be good. Who are you kidding?
Yeah, we're not. Different topic. This is a Star Wars video, but anyway. Potentially 2 really good shows back to back. We'll see. All right. Anyway, so this will probably be our last one for time's sake, but we're going to do number 6. And obviously we have to leave y'all waiting for our top 5. So, but no, in all seriousness, we're going to do number 6. We'll just jump right into this last one. And it's going to be Rogue One, which is a fitting one to follow up Andor, because obviously this is without this movie, Andor would not exist. So, yeah. Andrew, I guess we'll let you lead it off since you're number 2 on this one.
And I almost put Andor as number 1. For a long time, it was my number 1. Making this list, I had it as number 1, but I changed to Phantom Menace just probably for just a little bit of nostalgia factor. I think Phantom Menace is probably my favorite Star Wars movie. I think this one is probably the best Star Wars movie, period. It is just very
spicy.
I know.
On so many levels.
Very good. It's not a part of a trilogy. It is standalone. It's a great movie. I mean, from the very beginning, we see Andor, and we're getting that gritty side of the Rebel Alliance. There's just so much to say about it. It truly is a prequel to the New Hope. It obviously leads right into A New Hope, almost scene for scene, which I think is extremely creative, and I think a very hard thing to do with an old movie like that. In order to segue it in like that is very difficult without it being obviously shoehorned and cheesy. This one was done fantastically. The visuals are wonderful. The story is very, very good. It's a highly emotional movie. You just you really sympathize with the girl, Jen Erso, and her dad. I just keep coming back to. Of course, they're on Jeddah. The whole Jeddah sequence is amazing. Seeing the Death Star blow up a chunk of a planet visually was just mind blowing in theaters. I remember when he was like Moff. I just want to brain dead. I'm tired.
Tarkin.
Tarkin was like single core only demonstration. I remember thinking that's a thing, and then you get to see just the visual of it was amazing. But it's just a highly emotional movie. It's definitely got some humorous moments with the droid, and the voice actor for him he was in Firefly. I can't remember his name, but he's fantastic.
Alan Tudyk.
Alan Tudyk. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great, perfect choice for the droid. Of course, we get a lot of kind of a Rogue Squadron moments in the space battle. Was really, really good. But I'm really the movie itself is fantastic, but the very end with Vader is I would be remiss if I just didn't bring it up, because it's like imagine having a wonderful meal and then you get the best dessert of your life, because you really don't expect to see Vader or any lightsaber wielding anybody. You don't really want to as you're watching it. You're enjoying it for what it is. But I
wouldn't even
remember
put that as a dessert. That was like the 5-course meal alone, like by itself.
In a 10-second. It was amazing. I'm not going to use the phrase I used earlier because you had to edit it out.
Yeah, don't do that. I'd appreciate it.
We all remember it. That's what it was. And it was the first time, A New Hope, Vader. I mean, the movies are dated. Let's be real. Even with Empire Strikes Back, they're dated. Vader's this clunky guy, but in Rogue One, he's this terrifying Sith Lord, terrifying mechanical Sith Lord, where it's like all the light and sound is being drawn to him, and his saber ignites, and the music's kicked on, and the choirs are singing, and there's guys banging on the wind. It became a horror movie at the end. It became an actual horror movie. And I remember being legitimately, I don't think I've ever been scared movie, but I remember just I remember gripping my seat a little bit just because it was just so in your face. And he's just breezing through all these blasters, just wrecking dudes, throwing them to the ceiling. And it was just, how can you beat that? Hello, Billy. Billy's joining in for the best Star Wars movie ever here, with a cracker in his hand. But I was just telling him about the Vader scene at the end of Rogue One. I'm getting tired, so I'm not able to really articulate the whole movie. But the movie itself is just very, very good, very drawing. You really relate to the characters. I really like Jyn Erso's character. Sometimes with a character that we see from a little girl go to an adult, sometimes there's this kind of a dainty, fragile orphan trope that they do. And with her, they didn't. She was very much empowered in a good way. She really was doing it for her dad. And
there's rumors that she's going to have an appearance in Andor season 2. So
I love her character.
I hope those rumors are true, but
she's a good one. And the visual space battles are great. We get the Hammerhead Corvette doing its thing. I think every bro in the theater was like, oh, with that was just cool. Visually amazing. I can go on and on and on with Rogue One. If I had, just because in our podcast we do pros and cons of each episode, even if we just think the episode's perfect, we have to choose something.
Our best and worst.
Just our best and worst, just kind of as a thought experiment. If I had to choose one thing about Rogue One, I would say that maybe, I don't know. I guess you could just really nitpick if you really wanted to. But I guess, and it's a little bit of a Star Wars trope that people are kind of able to put on disguises and just walk into these highly secured Imperial facilities and get away with it. It's not a big deal, but it's just hey, if he's got a helmet on, you can just walk through anywhere and no one bats an eye. But they did it in A New Hope anyway. But I love the movie. It's number 2 just because I remember begging my parents to go see it when me and Megan went. I said, you gotta go see it. And then the ending, with Carrie Fisher and they're on the Corellian Corvette. Segueing that into New Hope is fantastic. And if you read the opening crawl of A New Hope, it, of course that was written, decades ago, but you're like, oh my gosh. It's almost like they took the opening crawl of A New Hope and made a whole movie about it.
That is literally what they did.
That's exactly how it feels. Yeah. And I think they did a good job. I think other writers and other producers and other time periods in this new Star Wars era that would have written it would have done it terribly. I think they knocked it out of the park. And it's just really hard to beat this movie when it comes to quality. As a quality Star Wars movie, it's just really, really good.
Yeah, I'll start off saying I think this is probably my most favorite movie when it comes to visuals. I think this movie was just visually stunning all around. Had some of the just when they went to each planet, it just looked just amazing. Visuals were great. And I always just like these little side stories where it doesn't involve really Jedis at all, and it's just these normal people that you can relate to that you could be doing exactly what they're doing, and it just like it's very relatable and cool to see, and it's almost like an underdog story as well, which is just great on its own. What is it, KS, or what is it, K2SO, I think?
So,
yeah, something like that. Yeah, that I love him. He's a great droid, just like very dry humor almost in a way, and I love that aspect of him. Cassian Andor, that's a big reason why I loved Andor. It's just because like Cassian Andor was one of my most favorite characters in this movie. I love Cassian Andor. I like his, just that he's like almost like kind of like heartless at first, but then kind of starts to get a little mushy in the heart, I would say, more towards the end. The end was obviously with Darth Vader was a something. I mean, that was just amazing. I mean, just first time we saw, I would say, I think that was the first time we saw Darth Vader right on the big screen since
since like, unless you count Revenge of the Sith, like at the very, very end.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really. I mean, I guess you could count that, but
you're right.
yeah, but that was just that entire scene was just like, again, just tension. You're just like watching, and you're like, oh my god, like what is happening? Like it's just so hard to like. It was like so hard to like comprehend like what was happening, because like you're just seeing him just absolutely just maul and destroy these people, and then just like the ending before that, like when they finally got the Death Star plans sent up to the ship, and then they're just kind of sitting there on the beach, knowing that they're done for and they're gonna die, and it just like Death Star just destroys the planet, and that just shot right there was just beautiful. Just them sitting on the beach while watching the planet basically just get destroyed. So, and I think the story was great. Acting was phenomenal. I think another favorite character was what did he say? I'm the Force and the Force is with me, or something like that. Root or something. Root. Yeah, he was a great character. I love that he was like a blind badass. Destroyed people. I mean, yeah.
So I mean, yes, this movie's a spinoff of a simple one setup line from the original film, but to me, it really manages to craft its own story around kind of the demand of where the plot has to go by the end.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely, I wouldn't say it's a character-driven movie. The idea of another prequel at this time when this came out was a hard sell, but unlike the prequel trilogy, this movie manages to, it tells its own story without the structure of a lead up to an event to which we already know the outcome, really. So Felicity Jones and Diego Luna are they're great, along with some of the secondary characters. I'm gonna say his name wrong. Riz Ahmed and Donnie Yen. They've become fan favorites, and then Ben Mendelsohn is great as Krennic.
Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah, Saw Gerrera. He seems a little cut up, but what we've seen in the films, like it may have been a little more beefed up earlier. So what we see may be kind of a cut up of it, but if you love old Star Wars, this is it. I mean, it's not, obviously I didn't rank it as my number one, but you're getting up there at this point. I mean, it's almost hard to separate them 1 through 6, 5 or 6 or 7.
Yep.
So,
Megan, you go ahead and I'll wrap us up when you're done.
As far as Rogue One goes, people always talk about, the new trilogy, it didn't do well because Star Wars fans hate strong women. I think Rogue One is a testament to the fact that that is not true. We just don't like poorly written strong women. I think Jane Erso is one of the greatest feminist icons of the past decade.
Wow.
I'll put that out there, at least in sci-fi. But I think it's a great story about someone who we have no inclination of who she is, where she comes from, but by the end you actually do care about these characters, which Star Wars sometimes has a hard time doing with extremely new characters. Like, we always kind of sometimes need them to be tied in to an original somewhere or a Skywalker. But Jen Erso is totally original. And I think the writing was very good. I think the characters were all very unique and well written. There wasn't, to me, wasn't really any slow parts. I think all in all, it was a very good movie. It's definitely my favorite standalone movie of all of the ones that have come out.
Yeah, I mean, I look back on this one as, I think all three of us, I think me and Drew and Ethan all went and saw this together.
No.
And I think it was the first one of all the new ones that we were all in the theater together for. Because I think one of us wasn't there. I think Drew, you might not have been there when we went and saw.
Yeah,
Force Awakens.
I actually watched this in Disney.
Okay. Yeah, I just remember like going into Force Awakens. It was very much it was like I kind of liked it, but I was disappointed that it wasn't very original in terms of the storyline, and so it was a bit of a letdown in that regard, even though I liked some of the things it set up. I just remember going into this movie with really no expectations because I don't think anybody really knew what to expect from it, and coming out of the theater with that feeling I had like the first time I watched the original Star Wars movie, where it was just like pure joy walking out of the theater, because it was the kind of experience when you watch a Star Wars movie that you want to watch. And so I always look back fondly on this movie because it was the one that like gave me that feeling again, that I really haven't. I've only had that a couple more times since then. And that would have been like the parts of The Mandalorian and then Andor. And it's like you don't feel that way about everything, but when a movie can make you feel that way, it's like that reminds you of why you love this universe so much. It's like I always look back fondly on it. I just remember I remember we get to the end of the movie, like really enjoyed it, and like y'all were saying, you get the 4-course meal, and then you get the Darth Vader sequence at the end, and I just remember like mouth hanging open the whole time that scene was going on, and I was just like, and thinking because they kept that so tight-lipped, like they didn't didn't leak to anybody. Nobody was expecting it to happen, and then it just hits, and it's like, oh my gosh. And so I don't know, it's just a perfect way to end it, and it's one of those where you get so much. Like the story's not overly complicated, but you get all these great performances and all these characters that don't really fit well together, but kind of have to find ways to work together and sort of overcome their selfishness in terms of the reasons why they're doing the things that they're doing, and ultimately give it all up for the greater good, which if you look back to the original Star Wars, that's what is good versus evil, and that's kind of what this one comes down to. And it's about regular people just trying to do kind of crazy things in the name of good. So I think that's kind of at its core, that's what it is. But like, yeah, the visuals are amazing. The final act is with at Scarif is amazing. To watch. And so I don't know. And this is something I always like to bring up because I'm a big Tony Gilroy fan, but like Gareth Edwards always gets credited with this movie because he worked on it a lot before they basically fired him. But if you ever watch any Tony Gilroy interviews on him explaining basically the job he had to do when he came in, he basically remade and reshot the entire movie. And so
I've heard that.
What you get in here is all Tony Gilroy. Now, there may be some scenes that they kept in that were from Gareth Edwards, but in terms of the story, the dialogue, all that stuff, where it's all Tony Gilroy. And that's why when you go from this one to Andor, you feel like a continuity there. Even though Andor is a lot grittier, it's still like you get the same tone because it's the same guy that's making it. And so I love to clarify that because like I've seen Gareth Edwards' sci-fi movie, which is like The Creator, and it's not on this level anywhere close. And I'm like, don't like give credit where credit's due. Gareth Edwards can't do this and because we've seen now. Like I like the Godzilla movie he did back in like 2014, like pretty good movie, but he's not Tony Gilroy, and so it's just
Yeah.
that's just something I like to clarify. And he's up there in terms of probably one of my favorite writers, because he's really more of a on the writing side than he is just like a straight up director. But he's also a pretty darn good director too. So, yeah, just a huge fan of his stuff. I have this one below Andor, because I've told people I think Andor is a more impressive work because it's a 12 episode thing as opposed to a 2.5 hour movie. Like the stuff that went into Andor was a lot more detailed and lengthy than this was. And so I think it's more impressive in that regard. And that's why I have it above Rogue One. But I kind of view them both as a collective work, if that makes sense.
One thing I forgot to mention was the CGI. That was so good with Tarkin and then of Carrie Fisher at the end. That's something worth noting. I mean, being able to see Tarkin, his character, that actor who's obviously not with us anymore, was really cool. And I'm glad they didn't recast him. I think sometimes Star Wars characters don't need to be recast. If the technology's there, it doesn't do them a disservice. It does them an honor, in my opinion, because, that the character of Tarkin is so, you can't replicate his look. That gaunt, aristocratic look that he had is very unique to him. And I remember seeing him on screen, and I remember just gasping like, "Oh my gosh, it's him!" But it wasn't. And of course, the Carrie Fisher they did was really good. But that was, I think, a big selling point to people, older fans like my parents. I remember they really enjoyed that, like a lot. It brought it back to them, because of course, The New Hope is that was their first Star Wars movie. So, and I hope so Disney does more of that, but they're careful with it. I think they don't need to do it too much.
Yeah, it's a good point. Well, that's all we got for this one. Yeah, if you've enjoyed these videos, please comment. Let us know like where you would rank these. And if you want to just to support the channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment. Just ways that we can get this out to more people, because we're obviously very passionate about this stuff, but we want to have that dialogue with y'all as well. So yeah, if you can, please support us, and we're just thankful that y'all hung around with us this long, and just thank y'all for watching. We'll see y'all next time.
Peace.